We can't hear you guys, by the way.
Thanks, Justin. Beat me to it.
Yeah. How you doing, David?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good, good.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah,
Yes.
there you go.
Welcome. We want to say welcome to the secretary. It's an honor to have you join us today at our meeting of the NPO, and we have a lot of staff here today, so and many people joining. I've never seen this many people join our meeting, so I'm very enthusiastic to see this level of participation, and I'm certain it's because you are here with us, and we give you a very warm welcome to the Greater Lowell region, and we look forward to hearing from you today and having you chair our meeting.
Well, thank you for having me. All right, let's see if I can do this. So I am going to call this meeting to order. And then I think I'm just doing remarks before we do roll call. I am not doing so great at this considering I do this all the time. Okay.
There's no grading.
Yeah, it's okay. So, I mean, honestly, the big thing I wanted to talk about today is, you know what all your projects are, so I don't need to cover that. I just want to talk a little bit about what Mass DOT is really focused on going into beyond mobility, but also going through, really quite honestly, the next fiscal year. We have our proposed budget that has been submitted. This is a very, very tight budget. This is probably one of the tightest state budgets we've had in a really long time because our revenues are down so much. So at Mass DOT, we had to be very thoughtful in how we allocated to our different divisions, how we allocated to the MBTA. And a lot of it really is a focus on safety, and it's really safety across the board. We spend a lot of time talking about safety at the MBTA. We all know that. But one of the big things we also are spending a lot of time talking about is safety on our roadways. Really, really hammering this home. And so that's when we're looking at infrastructure, like our bridge projects, looking at safe routes to school. But the other really big thing we're looking at is how we are training our drivers and how we are doing better roadway design to start bringing the speeds down. As you all know, the speeds have gotten completely out of control on our roadways. It's not just our highways. We're seeing it on local roads. We're seeing it on residential roads. And we're seeing the impact of that. Fatalities is something we track very closely. Every time we have a fatality on our roadways, we talk about it, we have a meeting about it, we talk about that individual. And I think for us, it really personalizes it. So when we're doing this work, it is like we are planning this for our own family member. As we're going through this, it has been rather difficult in some municipalities. I think, well, I'm a planner. You all know how hard it is to get a lot of this through. But we're really also then working on the education to try and get residents more on board with what we're trying to do. Talking a lot about what the impacts of those designs are, but then going even further, we're also spending a lot of time talking to young people about safety around their schools, but then continuing that conversation as they're going into high school and getting closer to getting their own driver's license. So safety, really, really big focus. As I said, we're also focused on infrastructure. We all know the bridge program is very, very difficult. Getting funding for our bridges is very, very difficult, but we are continuing to go after every single federal grant we can. The thing that we're now going to be running up against is being able to have that state match. And so we've done very well, especially on some of our larger projects, but you're gonna start to see that slow down over the next fiscal year because we are gonna get very close to not being able to meet that match. So done really well, gonna keep trying, but I'm trying to manage expectations that we're not gonna continue to be able to get that level of funding. Then I would think the last thing I really want to talk about is housing. This, as you all know, you live and breathe this every day. Housing is a major, major focus of ours. This cabinet, we work very closely together. So Secretary Augustus and Secretary Howe are the two I spend the most time with. We have now kind of created our trinity of economic development, housing, and transportation. So now we're actually overlapping our projects, not just in our bond bills, but especially as we are looking at executive orders and looking at different policies. Obviously, a lot of people are talking about the MBTA Communities Act. People, are really happy about it. But one of the big things, in addition to pushing those communities that we're focusing on, is also making sure the communities that are doing the right things, especially in regions like this, regions in Central Mass, looking at Western Mass, are building housing. And what we're trying to do is make that easier for them, whether that's helping them through the permitting process, whether it's working with our local planning boards, zoning boards, to try and help push them to think differently about how they're doing some of the permitting for especially not just affordable housing, but what I like to call the full spectrum of housing. So you're gonna hear us talk a lot about housing this coming year. And then you all know we have Beyond Mobility. We also have MassDOT at 15. This is gonna be our 15th year in November of this year. And so what we're doing with that is really taking the opportunity to look at who we are, what we're doing, and how we're going to pay for it. So that's gonna be going on over the next year, and that intersects with Beyond Mobility, but also with MassDOT's strategic business plan, which is really looking at, over the last 15 years, we've done a lot of projects, we have a lot of divisions. But what does the Commonwealth need and how are we gonna be able to meet those needs? So that's gonna be a really big part of this next year as well. And then the last thing I wanna talk about is our Transportation Funding Task Force. We had Executive Order 626. This created this task force, and as you all know, we've had blue ribbon committees, commissions, task force, working groups, strike forces, we've had all these different things, but we still have not actually tackled this issue. What we're trying to do differently here is we're engaging a different audience. We're bringing in more business community advocates, we're bringing in more nonprofits, and we're also making sure that we're covering the Commonwealth. So we're having every region is represented, also with a very big focus on rural communities. What we're tasked with is by December 31st of this year, we have to deliver recommendations to the governor on revenue options. We are not making decisions as part of this. What we're laying out is every single revenue option there is to try and pay for transportation. We will be talking about some of our larger scale projects, but we are not working towards a number. And I think that's something we really want to continue to reinforce. Everyone hears 25 billion for the MBTA. We have some needs too in some of our other areas, but what we don't want to do is focus on that number solely because we all know that number is already not true. That number really is from 2021. We want to look at what is the max amount of revenue we can raise with particular initiatives. This is going to be talking about things such as congestion pricing. This is going to be talking about tolling, other different types of user fees. We're really looking to what other states have done. As most people know, New York has taken on congestion pricing. We had Rich Davey, president of MTA, come and present. And what he really talked about was congestion pricing, but also looking at different efficiencies they did within their organization to bring down the cost of operating it. And then the other thing is getting really innovative on some of the ways they can tap into basically just putting on additional taxes. They went after cannabis is something that they have been taxing more, and the amount of money that this has been able to raise for transportation is unbelievable, to the point where they actually don't need to raise additional revenue. That's where we want to get, but it is going to be a very difficult conversation. So as we're going throughout the year, we're going to be engaging groups like yourselves to start bouncing ideas off of you, because we need to understand what the regions need. And we aren't going to be able to do that from 10 Park Plaza. And so it's going to be a lot of outreach, like I said, but it's also then going to be engaging the public to talk to them about, here's a very painful conversation about what we're going to need to do. You're going to be incredibly angry, but here are the things that we can get if we do this. So this is going to be moving very, very quickly, but we do want to make sure that we're not basically foregoing engagement just to be able to meet that deadline. So that is kind of just like a quick overview of everything we have going on at Mass DOT. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I don't even know if you do questions. I just kind of open it to questions, and I'm sure that's actually part of how this works.
Why not? Any questions?
I mean, I'll ask a question. You mentioned about taxes and things like that, and I know gas tax goes a lot to transportation. But what about people that have total electric cars? They kind of get a break
Yes.
driving on the roads and not having to pay a gas tax.
I'm glad you asked this. So EV charges is something we're also looking at because it's actually not just that they're not having to pay into a user fee, but it's actually the amount of, I don't want to say damage, but the amount of impact they're putting on our roadways is something that we're starting to talk about now because the weight of them is actually going to shorten the useful life of much of our infrastructure. So we are looking at that.
Okay.
That is gonna be a really, really big part of it. And I think kind of talking to that, it's also balancing equity. That's a really, really big part of this conversation as well, because, you know, many of the communities that need more transit the most are the ones that are already paying more than everyone else just for transportation. And so we want to make sure that that balance is there, because I think it can be tough, but the EV, this is something we've been talking about for several months.
I mean, we don't want to discourage people from going to electric vehicles.
Absolutely. But
There's a trade-off.
everyone needs to pay into this independent of what type of car they're using.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just make a note that, first of all, I really appreciate your remarks, and I'm grateful for everything that is happening with the agency, with your, under your leadership. I also just want to say that on that transportation, financing or funding task force, Linda Dunleavy from FERCog is actually representing MARPA, the Massachusetts Association of Regional Planning Associations, on that task force, and we also intend as a group to discuss this issue, so we'll have many opportunities to participate, in other words, in these conversations. And then I wanted to say, thank you also for looking at the sort of, working in coordination closely with other secretariats, and particularly in housing and economic development. And you're going to see in our NMCOG sort of showcase, if you will, how we view those three issues, very intertwined, of course, and overlapping as planners would. But in particular, how to communicate this best to our communities. And you did mention something about, you know, how MassDOT is interested in making things easier and relaying that to, you know, the sort of local permitting boards and maybe select boards as well. What are some of those messages that you would like us to deliver on your behalf?
I think for us, it's really trying to drive home that we aren't trying to tell communities how to plan. We're not trying to tell communities what they need to look like, but they need to understand that this is a partnership and we are in an absolute crisis. And I think the concern for us, and this is why it's even more of a conversation than us just delivering a message, is that people are leaving the Commonwealth. And they are, for all the reasons we know. And our communities have such amazing character, especially this one, that the last thing we want are more people to leave. We want more people in the communities, investing in the communities. So I think for us it's about the quality of life within the communities. And we can be partners in this, but it really does need to be a partnership. And we need to know from a resource standpoint, if there are reasons that you can't build housing, if there's reasons more small businesses can't come, we need to know that so that we can actually help with that. And so I think really it is, we want to be partners in this and we want that open line of communication. We're not just going to drop policies on people.
Okay, thank you.
All right, now let's move to the next part of the agenda. I will ask Kelly from NMMPO to call the roll.
All right, so Secretary Monica Silversmith,
Yes.
Jonathan Gulliver, MassDOT Highway.
Brian Pound representing Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Brian. Andrew Deslauriers,
Here.
Pat Roaches,
Here.
Tom Bomo.
Not to-
No, okay, Karen Pulio,
Here.
roll call.
Okay, thank you. We will now move on to item 2, showcase of NMMPO's planning efforts.
All right, do you want to switch to the other? I'll just stop sharing. And I may need to drive this one because the slides are pretty fast. She, get you back here, she wants to, like.
Yeah.
That's-
Alright. So is everyone seeing this all right? And I'm going to do that.
Yes.
All right. All right, so, we are very honored to have you here with us today. Thank you so much, and thank you to your staff. Thank you to everyone who is here today. My name is Kelly Lanema. I'm Deputy Director at NMCOG. I work under Jenny Raitt and have since before coming to NMCOG, but that's a whole separate story. So before we undertake the business of today's meeting, we did want to take an opportunity to provide you and everybody else here who may not know, just kind of a brief overview of NMCOG and the work that we do, in addition to our work as staff to the MPO. And as a background, our executive director, Jenny Raitt, she started at NMCOG in July of 22. And in the 2 years since, our organization has experienced quite a number of challenges, including staff turnover, the recent departure of our transportation manager, an office move, which I never want to do again, and the development of a strategic plan. We're very proud to have the team that we have here in place, because I think what I can say of all of our team is that we really have an interdisciplinary perspective. And it kind of speaks to this, this holy trinity of planning, and that's kind of the way that we approach our work. So I hope you'll see that in some of the projects that we'll show you today. So this work is really a representation of our work between 2021 and the present. And I think that also reflects kind of Jenny coming on board. So this is work that we could actually speak to if there are questions. So who is NMCOG? We are not only staff to the MPO, but we are also a regional planning agency. We serve Lowell and the 8 surrounding communities. And basically a 310,000 and change population. The purpose of our agency is to increase the capacity of our municipalities. And so some of our communities may have many, many staff, others may have just a handful and shrinking. And so our job is to really meet communities where they are and plan locally and regionally to help support them, not just on transportation, but in a lot of other initiatives. We do a host of planning activities and projects on behalf of them. And what the work that you're gonna see here is not work that we've done through the MPO, but it's other projects that have been funded through other sources. And so the first being regarding transportation planning. So we are currently doing, led by Jessica, and she'll talk more about this later in the meeting. We have a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, and we're conducting the Greater Lowell Vision Zero plan, and we're trying to think more about safety in our communities, and Jessica will talk about that. We also do things like leverage very, very small grants from the AARP to do walk audits in our communities. We did this with Dunstable, and then we helped Dunstable in applying for a Mass Trails grant to do a town center feasibility study for a trail network. And they were also pursuing MassWorks grants and Housing Works grants in order to better improve the infrastructure in town center. And then, you know, kind of crossing over into the connection between mobility and economic development. Last year, we completed an open streets plan. So thinking about how, not just how cars use our streets, but how pedestrians and businesses use our streets, and making recommendations for either temporary or permanent closures in order to support economic development. This also relates to economic development. Our mobility decisions and how we get around, or how we encourage people to get around, has a direct impact on our economy. So we have applied for economic development district designation, and we're awaiting word on that. I heard it takes a couple of years. But we also manage the comprehensive economic development strategy, or the CEDS, for our region. And then we work with a 30-member committee in order to advance recommendations from that CEDS document. You can kind of see how this plays out in our local community. So this is Chelmsford. We did a project in 2021, I believe, on Vinyl Square. It did not just look at parking and sidewalks and how people get around, but we also wanted to look at infill opportunities for new development to really support the economic vitality of this very important center in Chelmsford. Our work also touches on things like water infrastructure and rehabilitation. So this could range. It's from like kind of sexy projects, like looking at the rehabilitation and restoration of a historic school building in Dunstable Town Center. to things like brownfields. So we did a brownfields inventory for Westford, and which led to the town applying for and receiving a mass development grant for improvements at 12 North Main, which is a key site in the community to think about economic redevelopment and also use of underutilized areas. And then thinking regionally, and this is, I think, where we can really think, we'd love to work more with the state on this, about thinking about our wastewater, because this is a major limiter to economic development and housing in our region. And thinking about how we can improve that infrastructure is really critical to sort of unlocking the potential of our region for growth and vitality. I think, like what you said earlier, we view housing as infrastructure. And so we help support our communities in housing production plans. We have done one in each of our 9 communities, and we do those on an annual basis. The 4 most recent ones are shown here. We also lead a regional housing work group, and this work has parlayed into an application for an energy to an efficiency and regionalization community compact grant request so that we can start a regional housing services organization. So this would help our communities both increase the amount of affordable housing that they're providing and then do the important work of monitoring that housing to make sure that it's fully accessible. We also look at zoning and other regulations to support housing production, like the Drake inclusionary zoning study and a 40R zoning analysis in Pepperell. And then, like you mentioned, MBTA communities. So we have worked with all 7 of the communities in the Northern Middlesex region that are subject to this law on either compliance modeling, drafting the zoning, doing a ton of community engagement, and we'll continue to do that work through town meetings. If they take more than one, we'll keep doing it. But we're working with all of them because this is a really important connection between future growth and transportation. We are tying all of this work together with our regional housing strategy, which is called At Home in Greater Lowell. This is a strategy that's going to identify regional and community-specific approaches to creating housing choice, access to homes, and related economic development in each of the communities in our region. So our housing and economic development, environmental, and our other work really relates back to transportation and mobility. Because understanding where that housing and economic growth is going to happen really helps to support stronger projections for transit and congestion and understanding roadway improvements, pedestrian and sidewalk improvements. I personally think of myself not as a transportation planner, but I think of transportation planning as connecting people to opportunity. And I think that is maybe the approach or the attitude that we take when we're doing that work. We are happy to answer any questions about our work, either now or after this meeting, but we did just want to give you a sense of the kind of work that we do and the approach that we have to it. So thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you. I live in Devon, so I actually spent a lot of time in Westford. So I am much more familiar with kind of the southern part of where you're at, but the commercial development has been unbelievable. I mean, mainly my family, we just eat in all these locations, but I think hearing how you want to do more of that infill development and be able to, you know, create opportunity to put more people closer to these areas that they're already driving to, I think is excellent. It really, really is.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I'm going to share the,
Kelly, if I could just
yeah.
be your hype man for a second. Hi, Secretary. This is Andrew Delorier. I have the good fortune of being the chair of NMCOG. I'm also a select board member in Billerica. I just wanted to speak to the huge profit we received from NMCOG, being a NMCOG member community, just by the staff's expertise and their partnership. I've been on the council for quite some time and had the good fortune of being part of the team, bringing over Jenny over to her current place, along with her good selections in terms of staff. I'll just speak to the MBTA communities. I think Kelly soft pedaled the number of meetings that they're willing to take on in terms of explaining the MBTA communities effort. I think Billerica has taken quite a few of those personally. So we're just a huge beneficiary of the good work that this group of professionals delivers on your behalf and on all of our behalfs. So I would just want to bring that up because they won't speak to it themselves. So I feel not obligated, but proud to speak on their behalf. So I just wanted to throw that in before she quickly moved on to more data and numbers.
Thank you, Andrew.
So if it's okay, I just want to also recognize the other team members from NCOG who are in the room. And thank you very much to Kathy for her very hard work and effort and for leadership in that presentation. But maybe we could just go around if that's okay.
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great.
My name is Austin Torres Davis. I'm a transportation planner here and I joined in August. I'm very happy to be here. So,
My name is Jessica Belanger. I'm a transportation mobility specialist and I joined shortly after Jimmy. I'm excited to be here and thank you for joining us today.
And over here in the corner, I'm Blake Active, regional transit planner, started at the same time as Austin.
Indeed.
Yeah. That's right.
I'm Carl Hernandez, GIS and data program manager. I started in 2012.
Thank you.
So. That all is done, if you're gonna public comment.
All right, we will now go on to item 3, public comment. Do we have anyone here for public comment? Okay. We will now move on to item 4, approval of the February 28th, 2024 meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Can you please call the roll?
Sure, Secretary Monica Tippett Smith.
Yes. Actually, no, I need to
Oh,
abstain.
Yeah, okay.
I just was in the mood to say yes, so my apologies, extension.
I appreciate it, yes. Brian Bell.
Yes.
Andrew Deslaurier,
yes.
Pat Wojcik,
Yes.
Tom Bomo is not here, and Karen Pulia.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right, thank you. Next, we have item 5, status report on transportation improvement projects under design and construction. This will be Tim Paris from MassDOT District 4 and Justin Howard from the Lowell RTA.
Hi, Tim Paris from MassDOT District 4 Planning. We just had 5 projects this month that have changed since last month. Project. See, okay, it seems the one that's on the screen that's actually last month's summary update. I don't know if you have it on the computer. I can just go through and read it. None of them are major, yeah, I think I emailed you the wrong one, so.
Yeah, that was that's in our folder as well.
Yeah,
It's already open from the folder.
There we go.
Yeah.
Is it this one?
No, it
The
doesn't.
first thing was a change ad date. No, that's still last month's.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I just sent you the wrong one on Friday. But the only changes were that project 613-213, which is Bedford, Billerica, Chelmsford, Tingsboro Bridge Preservation of 41 bridges on the Route 3 corridor. The ad date for that has been pushed back 2 months to May of this year. And the total contract cost is being updated, so we don't have a new one for it just yet. Project 607-887 Lowell Brook Bridge Replacement. Wood Street Extension over Boston and Maine Railroad and Merrimack River. That showed new cost estimates with a cost increase of about $5 million, which brings them up close, brings like the federal participating costs up to almost 200 million on that, 198 million. 608-227, the Ricky Yankee Doodle Bike Path, phase 1, that just has a new project manager, Linda Walsh. 609-250, Billerica intersection improvements at Boston Road, Route 3A, Lexington Street, and Glad Valley Road. That had cost increases of about $1.5 million, up to nearly $8 million for the total federal participating. And 609-035, Westford rehabilitation of Boston Roads is actually in District 3. But that also had cost increase. The total federal participating increased about $1.5 million, up to almost 15 million. That's all we have.
Yeah, okay. First off, I just wanted to thank the secretary for coming to the NPO meeting today. It's a real honor. And to extend an invitation to you as well to come visit us with the LRTA. And because we have several projects that we're working on, and that I think you would be very interested in hearing about and supporting us on. We actually had the Secretary Augustus come and visit about a month ago, and we showed him several different projects he was excited to be part of. Any kind of updates from the LRTA? Currently, we have an automatic vehicle locator, automatic passenger counter project that is in the first year of the TIP, and that's being updated as we speak and should be in place by the end of May, with a rollout to our customers at the beginning of the new state fiscal year. Other projects that we have, we just amended the TIP last month, and we're looking to employ a mobility outreach coordinator to better service our councils on aging. So we thank the NPO for working with us to fund that. And we also have a Lono award that was given to us from FTA. And we actually have our first bus scheduled to be delivered. It's a hybrid bus. It's scheduled to be delivered sometime next month. So we're very excited about that. And those are basically our updates for this month. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Item 6, federal fiscal year 2025-2029 TIP development scenarios. This will be Austin and Kelly.
Do you want me to start and you describe the scenario?
Yes.
All right, so just an overview as part of our TIP scenario scoring, we also consider our tech score. So the tech is the transportation evaluation criteria. This basically summarizes how we assign the tech scores. However, we didn't have any new projects this year to score. So I can just provide a quick overview of the categories that we use for scoring. But again, just to note that we didn't have any new projects this year, so we don't have any new scores. So again, when we look at our transportation projects, we're looking at project condition, mobility, safety, community effects and support, land use and economic development, and environmental effects. One of the things that our most recent long-range transportation plan, which was approved last year, recommends is taking a look at our scoring. And so that will be a project that we will be bringing forward to the NPO as a potential project for FY25. So again, we didn't have any new projects to score this year, but we also will be looking at updating our scoring procedures in the coming fiscal year. These scores, then the scores from last year all remain the same as this year. And so in looking at our TIP scenarios, we stepped forward from TIP Readiness Day, where a number of projects were presented. However, some of them did not even have project numbers yet because they did not indicate there was no readiness. And so we looked at the overall readiness. We looked at some of the recommendations from MassDOT as to what projects should be moved back in time, which projects could be advanced, if any. And then we developed these two scenarios that you'll see before you, sorry, not four, two scenarios, but looking at the following criteria. So really understanding the design progression. Have these projects been moving along? Were they recommended to advance in a given year based on tip readiness day? Financial constraint, obviously, we're all financially constrained here, and maybe about to become more so. So really just understanding, making sure that we're being constrained in what projects we're advancing, and are we hitting our regional target? And then finally, looking at the tech, which again, it wasn't really a consideration this year because we didn't have any new projects or any like competing projects to really weigh. But this is something that we consider when we're looking at our scenarios. And so that we have two scenarios. I don't know if you want to summarize them here, or if you want to go to the individual scenarios to talk about them.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Kelly. And many thanks to Kelly and Jessica and Jenny and our partners in MaxDOT, especially Derek Schuster over there, in developing our scenarios. One of the previous slides said 4 scenarios. That's because we kind of started with 4. We narrowed it down to 2. And so here's just a chart sort of showing the difference between these 2 scenarios. The main difference you'll see is that if we look in the middle, Chelmsford, this traffic signal installation, Route 10 at I-95, this remains 2027, but the difference is that it is currently state prioritized. And so one scenario has us as a region bringing that onto our tip and using our money for that. And the other difference is moving into 2029, we've added a project in Westford. So one scenario that is programmed for 2029 and 2030, and the other scenario is that is not programmed. So what that looks like is that money-wise, in terms of our target funds that are not programmed, 2025 and 2026 are the same. 2027 would have essentially have non-programmed funds of $1.3-ish million, whereas scenario 2 has a much larger number than that. Similarly, in 2029, we're either at 0 and we're sort of fiscally constrained there, or we have $6 million not programmed, that is. In terms of looking at the actual scenarios, here's basically what our scenario 1 looks like. And I've just added sort of emphasis here for our 2 projects that we would be adding to our tip. So we'll see in the top section, 607-401, that's the one that is state prioritized and we would be bringing onto our tip. And the reason for that is that if you look at 609-317, that is dependent on the completion of 607-401. So our state partners essentially told us that 609-317 needs to be moved back after we complete 607-401, if that makes sense.
If I may just clarify, Austin, that
Sure.
the recommendation we had from Highway Division for those 2 projects wasn't for completion after the other, but that the sequencing for advertisement to construct both projects, 607-401 needs to advertise first.
Mhm.
And while it's possible for both of them to advertise in the same year, in a fiscally constrained scenario, you have to look at what funding scenario makes sense in that circumstance. Just wanted to set that.
Yeah, thank you. I should be using this phrase, AC, which is why we have this in one of our scenarios.
And the other thing with 607-401, with it on the state's tip, it is not on the state's funding scenario until 2028. And so this would allow us to move that, to advance that project to when it's actually going to be ready, instead of waiting until it is able to be taken on by the state.
If I could ask about that, I mean, that's one that's, it seems that it keeps being pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. On, you know, on the tip that we have, on the document that we have on the current tip, shows it in 2025, shows it advertised September 2025. And I understand what you said, that it's, they, you know, that they want us to bring it into the tip and not use the state funding, but I don't know, I guess I don't understand all that moving around on these that are approved and already have ad dates and now being pushed back multiple years. And, you know, showing now possibly 609, 317 not going until 28 and 29.
We have them on the scenarios as what the state had determined was the earliest readiness day possible, based on tip readiness day scenarios. And so I think there were a number of factors that limited their ability to be put in an earlier year, like they had been programmed before.
Right, our director of the highway, division of MassDOT had noted that these two projects are being rescoped simultaneously. I don't know if District 4 is able to weigh in further.
Yeah, the two projects are directly adjacent to each other, so we had to take a step back and look at a corridor type study or analysis for the different signals, whether they be a traffic signal, roundabout, or whatever treatment we're going to do. So one of the projects was going to inform the other project on what the right treatment would be, because they do directly abut each other. So we had to take a step back from our kind of intersection design into two separate projects and look at it as one long corridor. So that's kind of why we had to kind of rescope it a little bit. We sent it back to our designer and we have to kind of come up with the right strategy for the full length of those two projects.
Okay, so I have two questions then. Does that mean that they're no longer approved?
No, there are approved, there's separate projects, but
Well, then what you just said implies, and that's gonna be my next question, does that mean they'll be combined like some others usually are?
no, I think they'll still
Sometimes are.
be separate projects and advertised in different years. But again, it's one of those things where because they directly abut each other, you know, what you do on one signal a few hundred feet away is gonna kind of inform what the other signal is gonna be, even though it's in a separate project. So we wanna make sure we get the corridor correct, and then we can break it back apart again in two separate projects.
Okay, and that's gonna cause a delay of up to 3 to 4 years on it? I mean, that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think that again, it's one of those things where we wanna make sure we get it right. And we wanna take the time to make sure that, you know, we don't build something that's gonna not work well with the project directly adjacent to it.
Okay, I mean, you can tell where I'm from by my questions.
Thank you. So that's scenario one. And scenario two does neither of those things. So on one hand, we wouldn't be grabbing 607, 401 from state prioritized and making it regionally prioritized. We would leave that with the state, and that would leave us with about $9.6-ish million in our regional target balance. And then we would not add 610930 for the project in Westford, which we were going to program over 29 and 30, which would again leave us with, instead of $0 regional target balance, will leave us with 6 million. Am I leaving anything out?
No, I think the big difference between these two scenarios is that the first one really tries to use as much of our regional target cap as possible in any given year based on the total universe of projects that are available to us. And then the second one leaves funding out there, perhaps for us to really work more closely with our communities to see what we can do to advance projects as much as possible for 2027 and 2029.
Thank you. So these scenarios, we would require a vote on, the NPO's preferred scenario. I'm not sure if we want to go about that, or if there are any, additional questions on each. I know that every year we sort of do these scenarios and things will potentially move around next year as well, but, yeah, happy to answer any questions.
And as far as the preference, I can say I always like to use as much of the funds as, program as many of the funds as possible, so we do take advantage of that. So my preference would be scenario one. I don't know if everybody else is.
following up to Pat's comment, similar, right? Getting that maximum usage out of the resources is important. There is always that hesitation about the impact of the items that move out and ensuring that anything that moves out, you know, as long as there's somebody here that is representing those groups or has had the opportunity to represent those groups and advocate differently. It's my only comment.
Do you have any other comments or questions from members of the NPO?
If you're looking for a motion, I'll make a motion that we approve tip scenario 1 and move forward with that.
Kelly, if you don't mind, could you flip back to tip scenario 1, just could be on the screen, so.
Sure. Close that.
I'll second the motion.
All right, so we have a motion to approve scenario 1. Okay, Bill,
All right, Secretary Monica Chilinsnett,
abstain.
Brian Found,
Yes.
Andrew Deslaurier,
Yes.
Pat Lucas,
Yes.
Karen Julio.
Yes.
All right, all in favor.
All right, thank you. Now Justin will present the preliminary transit projects.
Is that Blake or is that me?
I would say that's up to you, Justin.
Okay, so last month we presented these to the NPO, the preliminary listing of transit projects for the region, and they have not changed in the month that has passed. So if you take a look at on the screen here, you'll see several different kinds of projects. You'll see our operating assistance, which has been boosted by the CARES Act and the ARPA funding that will run out in the end of fiscal year 26, but we'll continue the 5307 operating assistance throughout the life of the TIP. Some of the big projects that we really want to focus on for the LRTA and for the region, we have an ADA commuter access way project. The Lowell commuter station right now has a high platform that's fallen apart. The stairs are older and have needed emergency repairs to remain in operation. The elevator, which is an external elevator, has a lot of issues and needs a lot of maintenance to maintain. So with these things, we have to decide what are we going to do, and we have a couple different options for the project, but we are funding these in 25 and 26 of the TIP for the federal fiscal year 25 to 29. Some of the other projects, we're constantly replacing our bus fleet, our revenue vehicles. So you'll see that. You'll see one purchase in 29 of a smaller, less than 30 foot bus. You'll see hybrids as part of the Low-No award that I mentioned earlier. Another project that we're looking at are Hale Street facility upgrades, including the replacement of solar panels. So right now there are solar panels on top of our fixed route maintenance building. It's where our dispatch and where all our buses are housed and maintained. So we're looking to, and those were installed several years ago, and they're coming to the end of their useful life. So we're going to, so we have a project to update that in fiscal year 29. And besides that, yeah, that's mostly the main things I want to point out in this scenario. So I can take any questions anyone has.
I actually have a question. Justin, my only question is just confirming that when you reference some of the additional grant funds that you've received, that you've actually received them, that they're not, something that you're planning to apply for? But rather
The loan award that I'm referring to, we have received, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Okay, we will now move on to item 7, federal fiscal year 2025 Unified Planning Work Program Development. Jenny, you will present this.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh. Oh, and this, yeah. This is not related to this agenda item, but that's okay. This is really just, an update, refresher, reminder to all participating today that we have another process that we are starting, or that we've already really started, to develop the Unified Planning Work Program, which is essential to our transportation planning system here at NMMPO. And specifically to just orient you to the month that we are in, which is on the screen. Which shows you that we are going to be presenting to you at the next meeting in April, the preferred set of tasks, as well as the budget. It's also going to go to the council actually before this meeting in April, so that they can review it and potentially weigh in on it and discuss it, which is typical of what we do every year. And it'll come back to the MPO at the April meeting, as I mentioned, so that we can then start drafting the UPWP, which would then hopefully be shared with the MPO in the May meeting and ultimately released for a public comment period. And so that and then we would also hold a public meeting to answer any questions about our transportation planning process for anybody who has any questions, or anybody who wants to weigh in or provide comments on the types of projects that we are moving forward with. And then to ultimately bring it back in June to the MPO for a vote to endorse the UPWP, so that we can then move forward with those projects and plans in the next federal fiscal year. So that is the process that this MPO has used year over year. Nothing has changed. And I think it's also representative of where we're at in terms of the staffing and our team, and how we're also doing a somewhat parallel process in terms of our regular fiscal year budget planning for the agency. So it lines up with other things that Kelly and I, as well as Sarah Schreiber, who is our finance and benefits manager, for people who do not know that. We are all working collaboratively and with the managers of various programs here to develop a work program and plan for the agency for the next fiscal year. So our federal fiscal year planning in transportation is directly overlapping with much of that staff work. As we illustrated in our presentation about NMMPO projects, much of our work is overlapping, and staff are working on multiple types of projects across the team and the agency. And about 80% of the team is actually funded through the UPWP. In some way, shape, or form, pieces in some cases, and then in whole in others. And so with that, I don't think there's another slide on this, but I was going to also confirm the budget that we are using, and the budget as I heard it and as it was delivered at the joint Massachusetts Association of Regional Planning Agencies meeting with MassDOT that we held in January. My understanding is that the dollar number that we would be working with, and the potential for the apportionment, would be $1,123,000 and $23,832. That is the number that we will be working with to develop the tasks and the budget. And then the only other thing, and then if there's questions, I'm happy to take them. But the only other thing to mention is that we have started a very robust list of activities that require funding. And as similar to our other budget planning, we are looking for many different sources of revenue to maintain and sustain and grow our team here, to be able to advance the large number of projects that we're currently working on, and also respond to the requests that come from our member communities, which means that we won't have enough in UPWP funds by any stretch of the imagination. And so we'll be able to use that to leverage additional dollars. So it's very important to us to know exactly the amount that we're going to receive and how we're planning to program it. So I'll look forward to delivering that draft of tasks to the council at their meeting next month, and then of course back to this group the next week after. And that is all. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. We will move on to item 8, Safe Streets and Roads for All, Greater Lowell Vision Zero Phase 2. Jessica will provide an update.
Thank you. As I said, I am Jessica Belanger, the Transportation Mobility Specialist at NMCOG, and I am the project manager for the Greater Lowell Vision Zero project. This is the second phase update on the plan. I initially provided an update to the NPO in November, and I'll be providing 3 phases of updates to share the progress on the plan. Next slide. So a little overview on the Vision Zero plan. We applied for an SS4A grant with Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, and we were one of 10 regional planning agencies in the state of Massachusetts to be awarded a grant. As you know, the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program aims to eliminate fatalities and serious injuries for motor vehicle related accidents. We launched our Vision Zero plan in October of 2023 with the help of our technical consultants, WSP. We were second in the state to produce an RFP and secure a contract with the consultant. And the first step is really to create a regional safety action plan. Our plan will include a list of projects that have been identified in each of our 9 communities at the corridor and intersection level. And on the screen, you'll see our project deliverables. The first is a regional safety action plan with a high injury network and a high risk network. And we've developed a series of region specific equity indicators to help inform our analysis. And I'll define these terms a little bit later in the presentation. Next slide. On the screen, you'll see our timeline for the project. We held our first public forum in February, and currently our consultant is working diligently to develop our draft plan. In May, we will be presenting a draft plan for the NPO, and then we will release it for a 21-day public comment period. In June, we'll have a public forum where community members will be able to provide feedback directly related to the plan. And in July, we will present the plan before the NPO and request an endorsement. The high injury network seeks to identify the highest priority areas where the most severe crash events take place after reviewing a series of crash history. The high risk network seeks to proactively identify facilities for targeted improvements before a crash occurs by assigning a risk point to specific roadway elements that were present and related to the crash. So the high risk network is really the predictive analysis. And the equity indicators listed on the screen have been created to reflect appropriate factors and vulnerabilities based on the NMCOG population. For this study, we're looking at seniors, poverty, individuals that are carless, race, and limited English proficiency. On the map, you'll see that there are a series of points and they display fatal injuries and also serious injury crashes. When we use the word serious injuries, we're talking about a life-altering injury that could include a loss of a limb or something that would significantly change the trajectory of somebody's life. On the screen here, you'll see that the top 3 crash types or manners of collision in our region are angle crashes, head-on crashes, and rear-end crashes. Our consultant will be working to understand the crashes, looking at trends and the types of locations. And using this information, they'll develop a series of networks, create a basis to identify the riskiest facilities for improvement, and help us prioritize among potential projects when money and time have limits. And for the public outreach for this process, we have a 9-member Vision Zero Advisory Committee. We have conducted a MetroQuest survey, so that was actually a crowdsourcing mechanism where people in our communities can actually drop pins and points and make specific recommendations for improvements on projects, and they can even enter what type of improvement they'd like to see. So a specific intersection, maybe they'd like to see a crosswalk there. We're going to be hosting 2 public forums, one of which has happened in February, and then we will have another public meeting and also the NPO presentations to help engage the public. Next one. On the screen here, you'll see the top high injury intersections in our region. You'll see the top 50 and then also the top 100, a lot of clustering around the little area and then also spread out. Next slide. This map displays the high injury intersections and vulnerability index. In our region, the areas shaded in blue are our EJ communities based on the equity indicators that we've developed. Next slide. And then the high-risk network seeks to identify the facilities for targeted improvements. And you can see the areas in red are the most significant crash types. Lowell has some of the highest in the state, and as well as some of our communities have some red shading, you'll see. So. So this is our schedule going forward. This month, our consultant is just developing a draft preliminary list of projects. And in the month of April, we'll be hosting a municipal briefing where we bring the municipalities together to actually see the specific projects that have been identified and provide feedback on that. They'll also be recommending specific countermeasures or potential areas for future studies. In May, the plan will be brought to the NPO for review. June, there will be a public forum, and then in July, the NPO will hopefully endorse the plan. So a little background on why we're doing this project. Under the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Safe Streets and Roads for All program is aimed at reducing roadway fatalities. In creating this regional safety action plan, our communities will be eligible for funding under the program to apply for implementation grants. We're using a planning grant to develop this regional safety action plan, and our communities will then be able to apply for implementation grants or construction funds to carry out the projects that we've identified. And an action plan aims to develop a holistic, well-defined strategy to prevent roadway fatalities and injuries. That concludes my presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay, moving on to item number 9, regional housing strategy at home in Greater Lowell. This will be Jenny and Kelly.
I think it's mostly Kelly, but I'll just kick it off by saying, first of all, thanking Jessica for that presentation and for the work that she's doing on this, and also thanking our communities, and some of whom are actually participating in the group on the Zoom, as well as in the room on an advisory sort of body, as well as a sort of municipal advisors, not cross. I appreciate them weighing in and help us to ultimately inform some great implementation of the work. That's what we want to get to. With regional housing strategy, which Kelly's going to talk about, a similar project and process where we're doing planning with the intent of taking action. And in this one, you'll hear a little bit about sort of the process that we're using, why we're doing this work, and what's going to come next, as well as how it overlaps with our transportation and economic development efforts.
Sure. Thank you, Jenny. So I think as we maybe have talked to some of you about this already, we've definitely talked to our communities about it. We are doing a regional housing strategy. It is called At Home in Greater Lowell. The reason why we are doing this really comes about from all of those housing production plans that we have worked on. And then additionally, when Jenny joined the agency, she went around to every community and wanted to talk with the managers, with the select board, with planning boards about what their single largest issues were. Maybe not single, but largest issues. Housing emerged as the top issue in every community. Every community has a different attitude and aptitude for implementing changes to housing, as we've experienced during our MBTA communities work. So it's kind of like we have this situation where we have individual plans, individual housing production plans that kind of make recommendations, but they don't really connect at the borders. And so we wanted to think more regionally about, from Lowell up to Pepperell, what are a suite of strategies, what are a suite of recommendations that we can give to our communities. We can work with our communities to create them. And then we can give these tools to our communities in order to help them make changes and to help guide our work as well for like, what kind of projects should we be prioritizing when we have a certain amount of requests come in for helping somebody with planning assistance or helping people with transit-oriented design, all of these different factors. We want to be able to think about, like, does this align with what we have worked with our communities to identify as a regional strategy? So as we're doing this plan, we kicked it off. We had a kickoff meeting in March, which was delayed because of the snowstorm. It was supposed to be in February, but we had somewhere between 80 and 100 people attend. The the purpose of the kickoff was to really get people organized around a shared dialogue around housing. So we had Representative Arciero as our keynote speaker. He provided an overview of the Affordable Homes Act and the work that the Joint Committee on Housing has been doing in order to advance that. Answered a lot of questions about the Affordable Homes Act and various elements of it. Then we had a panel of speakers from HUD to the state level, to municipal level, and then local. We had Keith Bergman, who's a former 37-year municipal manager there, to talk about his experience in kind of the town manager side of kind of directing people from a position as a town manager, which you don't really have a lot of authority to make changes, but you are working with people who do. So kind of what does that mean on a local level to work to try to create housing change or change in housing? And then we had a number of breakout groups to really start to this goal setting process. So this is all going to lead to 3 key elements. The first element is going to be a data-oriented plan. So we're working with UMass Donahue Institute, who's doing a lot of research into our regional data. It'll be a typical kind of more traditional oriented plan where you have data, recommendations, goals, strategies. The second element of the plan is a little bit new. We're working with a storytelling consultant. And this is to help us understand, do more research with residents in our communities to understand their stories around housing. What are the challenges they're experiencing? What are maybe policies that they might not know that the housing that they live in is because of a certain policy, but how can we connect those stories to policies to help people who are making decisions really understand the human face of what happens when you make a decision about zoning or a development project. So we're kicking that off with Stellar Story Company right now. And then the third element of this is an implementation toolkit. So the implementation toolkit I see as having, it could be something like, draft zoning that communities could adopt. It could be looking at a certain number of policies. It could be educational tools for helping people in communities who want to advocate for certain kinds of recommendations or changes, helping them understand what is it actually like to try to get something on a warrant at town meeting. What does it mean to go to speak in front of a planning board? How does this whole kind of bizarre system, having come from the Midwest and not experienced town meeting before, it is a very bizarre system. And so trying to kind of dissect it for somebody who may not even know that's the kind of community they live in. So those 3 elements will be coming together in our final strategy plan. We'll be coming back and having a second summit probably sometime in the first 2 weeks of June. And this will be really a kind of a roll up your sleeves, get into the goals, start talking about strategies, and we're really going to have some really in-depth conversations about what are the specific actions that we should be recommending. Over the rest of the summer and then into the fall, we'll be working on that storytelling campaign and then working on the actual plan document. We'll have our final summit in the fall. We'll be sharing the outcome of all of this work and then wrapping up that final strategic plan into the winter so that we can start to work with our communities on, hey, how would you like to advance this? How can NMCOG support you in advancing X, Y, and Z strategy from the At Home and Greater Lowell plan? So thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I was just curious, I know several years ago, opportunity zones were identified as opportunities for redevelopment, with housing generation, with capital gains tax benefits for prospective developers. Is that factoring in at all with your, with the developers you're talking to or the people looking to put housing in certain parts of this region? Or is that kind of like from a bygone era already?
I mean, there was a point in time, maybe a little more than a decade ago, of like priority preservation, priority development areas that came from a different administration. And I'm sure that we'll be looking back at like sort of the historical trends and patterns and how people communicated their desire for growth or development. But I think that this strategy is really aimed at getting into all the in-between of what communities are doing right now and what they've expressed as their desires, to figure out what we can do to get them to actually do a little bit more and encourage them and give them the tools and the action, sort of an action agenda to really move forward. Whether it's related to prior planning that they've already done and building off of that, or introducing new things and new tools to actually figure out where they want to grow and develop. And MBTA communities, of course, could be a good starting point for those conversations, but it's certainly not comprehensive enough to address the needs that we actually have. And is not enough of a tool to also comprehensively address it across our entire region, because we only have 7 of the 9 communities that are applicable to MBTA. So we have, Dunstable, Pepperell, who are not MBTA communities and also are part of, our overall growth strategy. So I don't know what specifically you were, if there was something that our agency did more recently, I'm not familiar with that.
Well, opportunity zones was a federal level designation of certain census tracts,
So that kind
that,
of opportunities.
yeah, so.
So that's
state-
more like Lowell has opportunity zones.
Right,
And of course, any of those types of things, like I said, any prior plans or development, we're going to evaluate that. But this is really a forward-thinking piece. I thought you were talking about it's definitely more than a decade ago of priority preservation and development areas, which is not the same thing. That's a state thing, not a federal thing. Sorry.
no, you're good,
They're all relevant.
yeah.
But this is forward thinking and trying to encourage our communities to actually help us to address housing issues and work together collectively as well as independently to address the problem.
And it will tie in with, we're updating our 5-year SED, so those 2 planning processes are gonna be happening simultaneously, so they'll kind of be in conversation with each other throughout the process.
And all of our municipalities are working in partnership with us on this. They've all signed on as part of a commitment, so that of course includes the city of Lowell. And there are many, they have many other strategies. They have urban renewal plans, they have a number of things that are going on. We're also working with the city, as Kelly noted earlier, on a housing production plan. And so we kind of have a lot of prior plans to pick up on, but this is getting at some of the things that are in between that might be getting in the way of actually making housing happen. That's it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. And we have item number 10. Is there any other business?
I have some other business. I just wanted to mention last Wednesday on March 20th, we hosted the Massachusetts Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Board. I'm a member and I sit on the board. We had a lovely meeting with about 70 people in this room and online that participated. Some of the presentations included the Vision Zero plan that we're working on, the Yankee Doodle bike path in Billerica, and a traffic garden presentation from the city of Lowell. The meeting was really well attended. It also included a tour of the UMass Lowell Link project. But that was really exciting, and I just wanted to share. That was the first time that we were able to host MAPAP, so it's great.
All right. I will now take a motion to adjourn. So moved. Do you have a second?
So,
Kelly, can you call the roll?
Secretary Monica Tibbetts-Smith.
Yep.
Brian Fallon,
Yes.
Andrew DeSlaurier,
yes.
Pat Wojcik,
Yes.
Karen Julio.
Yes.
Adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.